Thank you, everyone, for joining us today.
Wait, are we live on Facebook now?
We are just about, hold on one second. Thank you for your patience.
It looks like we're live now. Great. Well, welcome everyone to our Native Peoples Action Community Fund Smokehouse Stories webinar. These are webinar series focused on community conversations and information sharing about how to get involved in decision-making processes that impact our ways of life. Today, we'll be having a conversation about how to get involved in decision-making with our awesome invited guests. And I always forget to introduce myself in these things, but Waka Jamai, my name is Jackie Boyer, or Ahana Jack. My family comes from Nunavak Island, Macoriac, Alaska, and I'm the deputy here. And then I'll pass it over to our executive. She'd like to introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Lorelei Ivanoff. My Yupik names are Banyuk and Janichak. I'm named after my grandma, Banyuk, Laura Peterson from St. Mary's, and after my uncle Janichak, Johnny Ivanoff from Unalakleet. My Inupiaq name is Lalchingak, and I love that name. I'm named after a woman from Shaktoolik who I've been told, without fear and with strength, she spoke truth. I live in my home community of Unalakleet, where I live in reciprocity with the land and waters that have provided for our family and the community for generations. I now serve as NPA's executive director. Kuyana Jakhanak for joining us today.
Great. And then running tech in the background. Kelly, would you like to introduce yourself quick?
Sure. My name is Kelly Cook Schroyer. I'm from Kotzebue, Alaska. I'm pretty new with Native Peoples Action, but so happy to be here. I've been here about maybe a month and a week, I think. Really happy to be here with you all and learn as much as I can from Mellisa, Eva, and Tiffany.
So that's it for our team. And then Mellisa, would you like to introduce yourself? And then Eva and Tiffany, please.
Good afternoon. NPACF Maktoyak Nalaknitun Mellisa Johnson. Sitnasami Runga, Pangmapat Kesakfing Mi Inurunga, Johnson Koyaharunga. Savaktunga Arctic Yukon Kuskokwim Tribal Consortium Me, Government Affairs Policy Director Me. So my Inupiaq name is Maktoyak. My English name is Mellisa Johnson. I'm originally from Nome, but I live in Anchorage, and I work with the Arctic Yukon Kuskokwim Tribal Consortium as the Government Affairs Policy Director.
Melissa and Eva, you're able to introduce yourself.
Gwenda, Eva Don Burks Uzra, Tagatili Tolnachtnek Tona Eslan. I'm Eva Don. I'm from Nenana and Manly Hot Springs along the Tanana River in the interior of Alaska. I have a couple of small businesses and a nonprofit that we're working to build like an indigenous farm, basically, that does agriculture plus plant medicine and hide tanning, and have a smokehouse there for fish. But also I most recently am working for the Yukon River Intertribal Fish Commission, and of course sitting on several state and federal advisory councils. So thank you for having us today.
And then Tiffany.
Waka wingayukton atka aluwil ngukuk kasatunlu Tiffany Areach Andrew. Hi, my name is Tiffany Andrew. I am from the village of Alakanak. I currently am employed by Yukon Delta Fisheries Development Association. It's a CDQ group formed by MSA, and I have a few other seats too. And that's about it. Thank you.
And And just thank you so much again. I know all three of you are so busy, and we're just really excited to have these conversations with you. Before we get started with some of the questions, Lorelai, did you want to talk a little bit about the North Pacific, just to give some context?
Sure. So some context, the North Pacific Fishery Management Council is the body that manages and makes decisions on federal fisheries in Alaska waters. And Eva, Mellisa, and Tiffany, co-hosts of this Smokehouse Stories webinar, they now serve on the advisory panel for the council. The council, according to their website, relies on the advisory panel for advice on how fishery management alternatives will affect the industry and local economies, on potential conflicts between user groups of a given fishery resource or area, and on the extent to which the United States will utilize resources managed by the Council's fishery management plans. Mellisa McDoyak Johnson was reappointed to a 3-year term. The council appointed Tiffany Andrew to a 1-year orientation term with an opportunity for extension in December, and appointed Eva Burke to the Alaska Native tribal seat for the 3-year term. Congratulations to you ladies. We're really thrilled to see this news after the December meeting. So a huge congratulations to you all. And thank you so much for putting your name forward. We recognize that you have quite the task, and we applaud you for using your energy moving forward in such an important way. So Pliana, thank you so much for what you're doing. As Alaska Natives and as women, as individuals who are from communities that rely on healthy land and water, I'm really interested today, and I think maybe folks listening in are interested in, I guess, what initially urged you to seek a seat on the advisory panel? And this is open to each one of you. What initially urged you to seek a seat on the advisory panel?
So Cleana, for the first question, I'll go first. This is Mellisa Johnson again. Initially, when I was with Bering Sea Elders Group, there was an opportunity to absorb the remaining term of another tribal member, and working with our elders, with Bering Sea Elders Group at the time, it's important to seek guidance from our elders, from our community members, and others in areas where decisions are made and where it's sometimes difficult to navigate through these complex management systems. And so working with community members in helping to navigate throughout that is what encouraged me to seek a seat on the advisory panel, and continue to say, yes, I would like to be reappointed. So that was some of the reasons why.
I could jump on next. This is Eva Dawn. I was actually taking a steam at the Alaska Club, and some elders came in, and particularly one that I really have a lot of respect for and admiration. We were talking about stuff like related to the lands and waters, fish and game, and I was telling her things that I was learning and reading about, and like I was joining a lot of circles and also listening to community members trying to voice their concerns in all these different state and federal bodies. And she said, well, how come you don't go? How come you're not in those meetings? I never see your people in those meetings. So the very next like board of game, I started to show up. And from there, it just progressed to being asked by Tanana Chiefs Conference, which represents a good number of tribes along the Yukon, to consider serving in the seat. And after talking to a lot of people, plus I took the North Pacific training that MREP did last year, Marine Resource Education Program. Both Jackie and Mellisa were there. And kind of seeing that process and thinking more about the data that's being presented. And I was just in some meetings today with more fisheries people from across the state, and not just salmon, but halibut and crab fisheries, talking about that we're just making decisions with a very short time frame in mind, and that we really do need to take a historical perspective. And I think when we talk about including traditional local knowledge, I'm like, it needs to be Indigenous knowledge, but that takes that historical perspective of all the things and can give a better synthesis and understanding of past impacts, where we've been and what's going to happen in the future. And I hear that because all the things that are happening now by our people, we have been warning against for a long time. We've been saying this. These things have been coming, I think, since even the 70s, is when people, our elders, first started talking about these changes that were to come. And so I think that that's more of like, honoring the ask from my people, but then also trying to use the education that I have in the science world to kind of marry the two knowledge systems. Thank you.
Hi, Tiffany here. For me, mine, it was sort of similar to Eva and Melissa's combined. It was already in my original 10-year plan for when I first started being fully employed by YDFDA, and it got kicked off like 7 years sooner than expected. And I'm okay with that because I understand that Indigenous knowledge and their history that is orally taught from generation to generation is very important. And it, in my perspective, it holds a lot more reliable history to scientific history, which has only been recorded for less than 100 years in our area. And it'll be really good to, I just really want the people from my area and the river to have their situations brought in and how everything is affecting them in more ways than we can understand.
Thank you all for answering that. I think it answered some of the questions I had for later in the webinar, but thank you for your very thoughtful answers. And it was really nice hearing kind of the reasoning behind this energy moving forward. So again, thank you. Next question is fairly simple, but I think it's as simple as it is important. As an Alaska Native and as a tribal member, I have my own ideas on why you're serving as an advisory panel member, but I'd like to hear in your words and directly from you, as an Alaska Native and a tribal member, who are you serving as an advisory panel member?
I guess I'll go ahead. I don't mind going first or last or in between. But as an Alaska Native and a tribal member of the Nome-Eskimo community, and who am I serving? I am serving, for me, the Indigenous people from the Bering Strait region and all around the state of Alaska, including our First Nation family members, even into the lower 48. I'm serving our people, our Indigenous people. There's been many systems that have been imposed on us from language, culture, dress, and other areas. And this is another, opportunity for we as Indigenous leaders to be involved in these decision-making bodies, and, also most importantly, to seek guidance and direction from our elders and our community members, especially those who still reside in our home communities, where some of us may not have that opportunity for whatever reasons. And, not only serving in those ways, but our systems that we have as Indigenous people, we love to trade our Indigenous foods, and to hear that someone is able to get some dry fish if the season is right, and be able to get our berries or duck, it depends on the time of year. And so that also serving in, I am a mother of 3, and, having one of my children as a military service member, being able to, share those foods in our way of life with our children and our future generations is part of the reasons who I serve and why I serve. So pass it on to either Tiffany or Eva.
I am serving the subsistence users, no race singled out, and also the small commercial fishermen. Because personally, I am a commercial fishing permit holder, green card, but I haven't done any commercial fishing since, I don't even know when, but I know it was pre-COVID. And everybody needs to understand that whatever goes on in one area doesn't matter whether it's at the spawning grounds or the headwaters of a river or at the mouth or, excuse me, in the open ocean. Everybody has some kind of effect on each other's one way or another. Thank you.
And I think for me, I really am serving I feel like I'm serving the plant and animal, the fish relatives, the marine mammals, the seabirds, the ecosystem, the lands and waters, all of the living things and beings that don't have the voice or the words. They need us to speak up for them. And I think, of course, as a tribal member in Alaska Native, we're always thinking about our food sovereignty, our food security, and thinking about how other tribes are doing across the state, not just our own. And also thinking about tribes. I'm part of many cohorts that are both national and international, and thinking about those Indigenous relatives across the world, a lot of us are facing similar issue when it comes to our lands and waters, and frankly, resource extraction, because that's what this state was built on. And fisheries is another element and component. It is the third largest economy in the state of Alaska. It's our only regenerative economy that's strong and vibrant. And we have this opportunity to take care of this resource, and thinking about future generations of all the living things, but future generations of our people and their strength being tied to the land and the health of the land and the waters. And so, I think I'll use salmon as this relative that I really am here, which has kind of been the driving factor, of course, in the decision making. I know there's issues with the entire ecosystem in many different species, but the salmon has almost a 2,000-mile journey. It goes all over, sees all the things, and that's what I think we really need to be thinking about, is this beautiful, magnificent species that's existed for millennia and nourished our people for millennia, and how we want to see that continue on into the future. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for, again, your thoughtful answers. It makes me think about the way that Alaska Natives have managed our homelands. We've managed them for abundance for millennia, and we now live in this capitalistic society, and Indigenous are now contending with state and federal governments asserting management of so much of our land and waters and the animal relatives that we live in reciprocity with. And Alaska Natives have had to battle mindsets and values that differ from our own, and do a lot of educating on sustainability and what sustainability looks like, and respect for our animal relatives in the land and waters that do provide. The council and the decision-making process at the council level is really political and governed with Western principles and Western science practices. I guess I'm interested in what ways you're hoping to bring the Indigenous values and Indigenous mindset to the space in the very political process. I imagine you're meeting with people in your communities and with various groups throughout Alaska to understand issues and approach to issues and priorities and such. But just knowing how political the process is, and yeah, what's your plan on engaging with those you represent as a member of the advisory panel?
My personal plan has always been to speak to any people at any meetings to get any sort of their perspectives and their obstacles that they had to overcome, or anything else that's being thrown at them that was not predicted. And I usually just find random groups and talk to them, or just go stand by anybody and try to make conversation just to hear what goes on in their region. Because one thing I've noticed is each region has a similar problem and something that they can all bond with. And that's how we are getting so restricted with how our people used to traditionally and culturally fish. And it's not the same anymore. It's not a free life anymore.
I'll go next on this one. I'm already attending quite a bit of meetings where a lot of different tribal organizations, especially those where their mission involves like fisheries and the ocean. I attend those meetings and take very good notes and been trying to stay up on issues. And I think that was one thing that was important for me to take on very seriously, was to do a lot of reading, and attending this last year is going to as many of the decision-making bodies that I could go to: the North Pacific, Federal Subsistence Board, Alaska Fish and Game, Board of Fish, going to all these different places to see how each system works and how decisions are being made. And most importantly, how are these different decision bodies working together, especially when you think about salmon, because it's crossing all of their jurisdictions, right? And that that some type of cooperative, collaborative work has got to be done in a better way. And also, I plan to attend I was supported by several tribal groups, and my plan is to, I've been connecting with them, but to attend some of their meetings as well. So like the Kuskokwim Intertribal Fish Commission, really want to attend one of their meetings that's coming up. And of course, at the advisory panel meeting in the North Pacific Council meeting itself, there's a lot of good time where you meet people and can have the conversations and get to better understand their issues. And I think that's really important, to be doing a lot of networking within those spaces.
So for me, it has been quite a learning opportunity to bring our values and our way of life to this this political process, but continuing to interact even in those what could be perceived as uncomfortable situations, and that we all, you know, as human beings, we all, you know, have our way of life, and our way of life means different things to everyone. But, you know, the relationship that we have with our environment, you know, is something more, you know, than political gain or monetary gain, that we, you know, we have certain ceremonies, we have language, we have our dance, we have our clothing or survival gear, you know, that it's more than, you know, it's more than politics. And also that Western science isn't the only science that is that should be utilized to determine these, you know, very pertinent decisions that impact our way of life, because our indigenous knowledge, you know, has been oral for many generations. We are, you know, continuing to grow to have it, you know, documented like Western science, like the politics that we interact with. And as far as engaging, you know, with folks, is just like, you know, Eva and Tiffany had mentioned, like reaching out to community members, asking, you know, there's X, Y, and Z meeting coming up. Can I participate? And, you know, in sharing the knowledge in this management body, thank you, you know, for either allowing me or inviting me to participate in your community meetings. But what kind of questions do you have about this process? And how can we continue to grow our younger generations and encourage them to participate, you know, in this area? So
Yeah, that's always a thing, right? With the council, is it's a pretty complex process, and how do we get people engaged? And not only engaged, but how do we make our energy effective in change and getting our voices heard in a way that's meaningful? Eva and Tiffany, your first meeting is coming up in a few weeks in Seattle. Then in April, the council will take up chum bycatch once again. The environmental impact statement will be released. We're expecting that same month. And the different alternatives to mitigate chum bycatch will be looked at once again at the April meeting. And as we know, tribes will be asking for one thing. The different fishing sectors will ask for their recommendations, and the trawl industry will make their requests, of course. And we can expect really extensive discussion and testimony at the April meeting. Because as we all know, there is a current salmon crisis on the Yukon-Kuskokwim rivers, and we're seeing some of the effects in the Norton Sound and the Arctic region. I'm from Unalakleet, and we definitely have seen lower numbers returning of silver salmon, which used to be a huge fishery. So we know there is a salmon crisis, and chum salmon mitigation has been a priority for many tribes and many communities along the Yukon and Kuskokwim. What are effective ways Alaska Native tribes, individuals, Native organizations can ensure their voices are heard? We know the APN Council takes testimony, oral and written. And again, we can expect a huge turnout at the April meeting in Anchorage, but what are some other ways maybe that people can ensure their voices are heard by the decision makers at the APN Council level? What would you suggest? I'm really curious about that.
I'll go on this one. I really advise people, like, if you can, if you're up to date, because sometimes if you start collaborating with other groups, and what we're doing in the interior is we're really kind of starting from the ground up, which is like strengthening our fish and game advisory committees, because those are our people who are on the ground, the hunters and the fishermen. And then that way, and we're pairing them with people like myself, and then another person. I'm working with a few young Indigenous women scientists, and our goal is to like pair our skills with the ACs so that we can like help our, like, we can help write testimony that is, I think, like pretty strong. And the other thing is like not just like gathering on the ground and like getting the written testimony ahead of time and submitting it before the deadline. I think that's like, we're building a calendar to share it with people, to be like, this is when comments are due. Here's some things that we're talking about. Here's where you can go for more information. So really trying to like put information out there for people that are going to like maybe just read the talking points and key issues. But then there's other people like myself who might want to read a little bit more and start to do their own research. And so we're trying to like provide information to accommodate that spectrum of knowledge. And then of course, like bringing the two knowledge systems together, because they're both incredibly strong. And I think a really important thing that I have learned is like when you're writing your written testimony and then you have the chance to provide oral testimony, is to listen into the testimony of others at the meeting. And so you might just be like, oh, I'm going to give my testimony and come to the meeting for this short time. And if you're able to, I would really recommend coming for the full process, because you can, you can testify orally and you can bring in what you're hearing in that oral testimony, get your thoughts written out ahead of time, and then stay till the end of the decision-making process. And this is really important in the Board of Fish. And I'm going to be learning this go around in the North Pacific process, like, because you really need to stay to when they make that final decision. Like, and that gives you a chance to keep talking to council members, like about the information that's been presented, or, what's missing from the picture as they're deliberating in council. So I guess that's some of the ways I would encourage people to join.
I fully agree with Eva, because most of the time, a lot of testimonies when they're being told in the crowd is usually the same or similar fish meeting people throughout the entire year. And there's often the same similar faces, and when somebody is missing, everybody's looking for them. But at the same time, we're sitting in the audience with the people as well, hearing all the situations going on per meeting.
Thank you all for your input on that. I think it's really important for, yeah, that whole aspect of providing testimony is so important and integral, and we need to keep showing up to inform and educate and us and ensure that our voices are heard in that space. So thank you, each one of you. Before we get to audience questions, I kind of want to get to the heart of why you're doing this. I'm always really interested in like who inspires you to do the work that you're doing, and who has been instrumental in teaching you Indigenous values and mindset. Who are those people who have been really integral in raising you as Alaska Native women and who you are today? I'm really interested and would love to hear kind of the deeper heart work of what is inspiring you to take on this pretty big task.
I'm going to hurry up and jump in because I'm about to head to the airport. But
Okay,
my
thank you.
grandmas, both of my grandmas have always been a very important part of my upbringing and teaching cultural values and stuff like that. And we grew up doing extended family subsistence activities. Like instead of just my parents and all his kids, it would even be my parents and his sisters and their kids and our grandparents as well. And that has always been very important with my foundation of who I am and what I'm coming here with. Thank you.
So just like Tiffany mentioned, being blessed to, to have my grandparents, not only, the ones that adopted my mother, but, finding out who her biological family members are from, Shishmaref. And then on my father's side of the family, like, the knowledge, skills, and inspiration from folks from Little Diomede Wells down to White Mountain, and not too many people are blessed to meet their great grandparents. And so, being able to meet one of my great grandmothers who lived to be 100, and, still learning about, that side of the family, from the White Mountain area. So I'm probably got some Yupik in me too, but, as far as having that, and then also other community members, from the Bering Strait region, but extending it on to, throughout my Western working life, being able to go to different meetings, like the Nakanaga, for the interior, and then down to Southeast Alaska. So just getting a little bit of exposure of places around the state and interacting more so for me with our elders, and, getting to know how our ways of life, even if we have language differences, that the work that we do really matters. And the other part for inspiration is just finding out that, especially for our children who have been blessed to taste our foods, that they want it, moving forward as Indigenous people. It's a form of identity. And, that if I'm ever blessed to be a grandmother, great grandmother, that these food sources are still available, to my future generations, and that in working together, that we continue to rely on our elders as our environment changes. So Thank you.
It's so so indigenous that we're all like, it's grandma. But when I was a little girl, my grandma, my grandma and dad, we lived at fish camp in the summer, and we lived on the tripe line during the winter. And it wasn't until the resources declined, the commercial salmon fishing, commercial fishing for salmon on the Yukon and Tanana rivers began to decline in the 90s. And so we were becoming outlaws. And so we had to move into Nenana, and that's when there was a lot of significant changes in our lifestyle, and we didn't get to go to fish camp as much anymore. And I don't know if anybody knows about the Fairbanks cab culture. Like there's a lot of native cab drivers, and so there's a lot of politics that happen in these cabs. And I used to go with my grandma in Fairbanks, and she is the kind of person that was she traveled the land semi-nomadic by dog team with a wall tent. And so, as she had gotten older, she lived in Fairbanks. And she was a fluent Danaka, Koyukon, Athabascan speaker, but I'm not. And she used to make me go around Fairbanks and like talk to all these different people and like listen into all these politics. And I really like am grateful for that. And I think it's really funny because you hear all these politics. And when I was in kindergarten, and my kindergarten teacher did not tell me the story until I graduated. It's saying my connection is unstable. Okay, so my kindergarten teacher didn't tell me this story until I graduated high school, but she said I had to laugh so hard because you came into class into kindergarten off the trap line in the fish camp, and you told everybody, I'm Indian and you better not mess with me. And like, I feel as I've gotten older and started to become more vocal and an advocate for the people, I realized like all these tools that my grandma was giving me for where I'm at today, and that she was prepping me to be able to use my voice and to really come from that mindset, like, do not mess with me. And I feel like there is a little bit of that fire and spice that is necessary for where we're at, and needing to really hit the conversation hard and like, let's make sure we're on the same page of understanding. And I don't even think we're there in the council from the past couple meetings that I've gone to, and even from the North Pacific, from the MREP training. I'm like, there's still a really huge lack of understanding of our Indigenous worldview and a respect for our Indigenous knowledge and our science that we've passed down forever. And so I really thank my grandparents and my dad for raising me on the land, and for my dad for going back to it I had kind of become super colonized. And then about 6 years ago, I was going back out to fish camp, and then I realized just how bad things were, and I was like really needed to help out.
Thank you. It just reminds me that it's the moments that make us, those small moments that really make who we are and create kind of who we are as we live. So thank you, each of you, for being so generous with sharing your past and the people who are important to you. Yeah, so I guess I'm interested in what ways NPA or Alaska Native tribes or Alaska Native organizations can support your work in the AP. And maybe you don't have an answer for that now. And if you do, great, we'd love to hear it. But we would like to know at NPA how we can support you in your work.
I'm not sure if Tiffany is at the airport in Alaknak or not, but I'll go real quickly that if there are meetings, within our different regions where we might be invited to, I can't speak for Eva or Tiffany, but for myself, that you know, like, hey, you should probably consider going to this in-region meeting or that one, because not all our ways of life are different depending on where we're from. And, you know, as far as Alaska Native organizations, and most importantly, our sovereign tribal governments, that though there's a lot of support that comes our way, what can I do as an advisory panel member to support your like direct you know, the direct impacts to your way of life? Because I live here in Anchorage, you know, and I am very familiar with village community life, and I love it. And so what can I do to support you in this capacity, this complex capacity that is, you know, how do you make sense out of the agenda, the like connectivity, like what if you have connectivity issues and so on. So yeah, so those are a couple of areas where I would, you know, I would like to be, you know, like, hey, how can we continue to work together in this complex environment?
Yeah, I agree with Melissa that like we're here and can always be reached, and happy to travel or attend meetings. I got another message. I think my internet's still okay. And I think one way is like as we're developing, like I know multiple orgs were developing these calendars, and there's like call outs for testimony and stuff, is like, you know, sharing that as widely as we can is important, so more people know, because it takes a lot of time to like follow the issues and then start being in the spaces where instead of doing all the research, you're trying to do it all on by yourself, that you're actually able to see like there's all these different groups and organizations that if you start to go to their meetings, you're just going to learn so much about any of the issues, I feel like. And so I think that, you know, we all need to start showing up as much as we can and trying to learn. And I think for us, you know, like even when you think about North Pacific, I think about all this stuff and I'm like, man, I hope we're not too late. I think about that all the time. And so the more that people can also just support us and tell us to keep our heads up, and maybe if we're in your community, serve us some good native food. Like just keeping ourselves well as we do this work is important. And I just want to share that message. Let's keep ourselves well.
I here. But how can NPA help? That's never really crossed my mind, except mindset has always been, how can I help? One question is a little hard to answer. But something I'm always being told by my mentors between 45 and 70 is always go get you some elder time. Spend time with them, hear their stories, hear what they have to say. I think that's the most voiced word. So I'll voice that here. Get help with elders and youth mingling.
Thank you for saying that. It's a good reminder for us at NPA to set aside time, or to not set aside, but prioritize time with our elders to continue learning and to continue the mindset and values. So thank you for sharing that. I'm going to share in our group chat the NPA calendar, or the Powell calendar, Protecting Our Ways of Life calendar. So a lot of the regulatory management type meetings are all posted on this calendar, and it's for 2024. Thank you, a huge thank you to Kelly, our communications manager, who compiled all of this. So if you're interested in Board of Fish, Board of Game, North Pacific Fishery, it's all there. And and Jackie said, if you have any additions to this calendar, if you know of any other meetings, please let us know, any other public meetings, and we'll post those meetings to this calendar. It's just one resource that we provide at NPA, along with the toolkits we provide and other things. Thank you, each one of you, for joining us. Tiffany, thank you for joining us, even though you're catching a flight. We really appreciate your time. I really appreciate, again, the generosity of, sorry, what were you saying?
It was a super last minute scheduled flight due to
Okay.
unforeseen errors. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. It's really valuable hearing directly from you. Did you have something to add, Eva?
Yeah, I'm already looking at the calendar. I'm such a nerd. I'm sorry. One of the greatest things that we've been doing that I feel is helping bridge that racial divide that we feel sometimes, because I feel like a lot of Alaskans are united around salmon. A lot of species of salmon are not doing well. And so that was something that I learned going to the Board of Fish meeting. And so we attend the Fairbanks Fish and Game Advisory Committee meeting. They actually have a fisheries subcommittee, and this really amazing woman runs it. And we, she goes over a lot of things that are of interest to us as well. And so I think the one meeting I haven't gone to is in Anchorage, but I'd be curious to see like how the Anchorage Fish and Game AC, like, I wonder if they have a fisheries subcommittee, and, are they looking at that kind of bigger region? Like, because our FAC lady, I mean, she's looking at all the things. And they have a lot of experience with the Board of Fish and Department of Fish and Game. And I know that's not relevant to the North Pacific, but I feel like the connections made in there, and then representing Alaskan issues in the North Pacific process, there's a lot of groundwork in the state system that can help, prepare you for the federal systems. And to pray. We need to pray and have ceremony as Native.
Mm-hmm.
We need to remember that, go to spawning grounds and pray and have that ceremony and that relationship. Maintain that connection to our salmon relative and other relatives if you can.
Thank you so much for that reminder. Go ahead, Mellisa.
I was just going to say, in addition to continuing to help us find ways to remain grounded in our Indigenous way of being and doing, and but is also to give us forgiveness if we mispronounce anything, or if we cannot remember your name, because some of us might meet lots of people and like, I'm so sorry, I forgot your name. Because that happens to me a lot. I remember faces, but I'm really bad with names.
Okay, I'm sorry. I guess we don't have time for audience questions. I thought we might, but I just wanted to give one final, just a few minutes, if you had anything in closing that you'd like to share. But right before that, I need to give a little NPA plug. Please sign up for our newsletter if you haven't signed up for it yet. I included the link in the chat. That's where you can keep up to date with all things NPA and upcoming meetings and testimony and such. And also follow us on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. But before we leave, I just wanted to give you a final moment if you had anything in closing. Thank you, each one of you, for joining us.
I think I wish we had an elder on the call to send us off in a good way, but also if there are folks who are interested in continuing to engage in the North Pacific Fishery Management Council, and if you maybe are might need like some kind of travel support, maybe we can connect the dots to some organizations. I don't know. So, but reach out, because if you don't reach out, we don't know that, you know, and we already know that we all have capacity needs and can't be everywhere at once, but some of us can, you know, like try to find ways to support us in making those travel efforts.
Yeah, I think that's important is like, you know, we're always here if people want to talk. You know, sometimes it's hard to have a lot of individual conversations about the issues that are going to be brought up at North Pacific. So again, just encouraging people to start showing up, because, you know, in Nenana, in our Nenana Minto AC, we have a young chair, and we are purposely having a young chair so that she could, of our Fish and Game AC. And we're doing that because we want her to, you know, have this interest. She really likes to do the regulations, but also bringing her up as a young person to be in that responsibility seat is really important. And then, you know, this is, I'll be staying out at the North Pacific, and she's out in Oregon. She's like, can I come stay with you in your hotel room and go to the meeting and learn? And I'm like, heck yes. So like, we're open to all kinds of stuff, not inviting everybody to come stay in my hotel room. But what I'm saying is, you know, just reach out and ask. And I think for me, one of the easiest ways is like, honestly, like Facebook Messenger is a pretty easy way to get a hold of people. And I really try to I don't like to be on social media too much, but I'm interested in what some people are saying and being able to be available for people to connect. And then it's a great way to share what you're doing. And Olivia Hanahe Irwin, I want to give her a shout out because she's actually creating TikTok content on like breaking down, like, here's this book that does these regulations, and like trying to make it simple. Like, again, sharing more content about like how to engage, and here's more information, so that, you know, sometimes that stuff is not easily available. You don't know if you're looking in the right spot. So shout out to you know, more podcasting, more content to explain this process, short videos. I dream of making this really cool video of Mart at the Board of Fish last year, but the chair of the Board of Fish was really awesome leading that meeting at the Area M, and just, you know, making some content is helpful for others.
Tiffany, did you have any closing thoughts or comments?
Just that ever since I started attending these salmon meetings about 2017, I've been very happy with the increased amount of tribal people that have been showing up and bringing in their own voices from their own regions. Because when I first started, the numbers were very low with how much attendance came from tribal people of Alaska. And I hope it continues to grow and for more involvement with everything that's going on that impacts our daily lives. Thank you.
Hey, Diana, it looks like we're a little bit over time. So thank you for staying. I know everyone's busy. Thank you for joining us for this webinar. As Lorelei said, please sign up for our newsletters and check out the Powell calendar. And we look forward to seeing you at the next webinar. Diana, stay well, be warm. Yuchi.
Anabasi.